Mm. The moment my boots hit the driveway, I knew something was wrong. I had been gone 11 months. 11 months in a forward operating base outside Mosul, eating dust, counting days, writing letters my nan probably never got because my mother always said she'd pass them along. I came home 2 weeks early, a medical discharge, a knee that took shrapnel on a Tuesday and never really forgave me for it. No fanfare. No announcement. I didn't want to party. I just wanted to see my nan. My nan had lived in that house on Clover Ridge Road for 41 years. She raised my father there. She grew tomatoes on the south side of the porch every summer and made gravy from scratch every Sunday, and never once in my life had I walked up those porch steps and not smelled something good coming from inside. That afternoon, I smelled nothing. The porch light was burned out, the welcome mat, the one she'd had since 1987, the one with the faded roosters on it, was pushed sideways against the railing like someone had kicked it there and never straightened it. 3 days of mail spilled out of the box and onto the top step. I picked it up without thinking, the way you do when something just feels wrong and your hands need something to do. I knocked. Nothing. I used my key. The inside of the house was dim, all the curtains pulled. It was August, 91 degrees outside, and the air conditioning was set to 68. My nan always kept it that way, but there was something stale underneath the cold air. Something that didn't belong. I called her name. A sound came from the back bedroom. Not a voice, more like a shift, a weight adjusting. I moved fast down the hallway, past the photos on the wall. My father's high school graduation, my parents' wedding, a picture of me at age 7 holding a fish I caught at Lake Huron, and I pushed open the bedroom door. My nan was in the bed. She was 81 years old and she had always been small, but lying there she looked half the size I remembered. The water glass on the nightstand was empty. The pill organizer beside it had 3 days of medication still sitting in their little plastic compartments, untouched. The blinds were shut. There was a smell I won't describe. She turned her head when I walked in and she looked at me for a long moment and then she said, very quietly, "Marcus, you came home." I sat on the edge of the bed and I held her hand and I didn't say anything for a long time because there was nothing to say yet. I just held her hand and looked at her face and tried to understand what I was seeing. She was dehydrated. She was confused about what day it was. She thought it was Friday. It was Monday. She hadn't eaten a real meal in at least 2 days. I could tell by looking at the tray on the dresser. The food on it dried out and untouched. She told me her hip had been hurting badly for the past week and that she hadn't wanted to make a fuss. "Where's my father?" I asked her. She looked at the window. "Your mother said they needed a trip. They'd been stressed." I asked her who had been coming to check on her. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your mother said she'd arranged something. I got her water. I got her the medications she'd missed. I found soup in the pantry and heated it on the stove and sat with her while she ate it slowly. While she ate, I looked at my phone. My parents had checked in at a resort in Scottsdale, Arizona, 4 days ago. My mother had posted a photo of a sunset over a pool, cocktail in hand, caption reading, "Sometimes you just have to recharge, Ahand." 47 likes, 12 heart emojis, 3 comments from her friends saying she deserved it. My father had posted a photo of a golf course that morning. I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter and stood at the sink for a minute looking out the window at my nan's tomato plants, which were overgrown and drooping from lack of water. Then I went back to her room and I said, "I'm here now. You don't have to worry about anything." She reached up and touched my face the way she used to when I was small. "You look thin," she said. "You always look thin when you've been somewhere hard." I stayed with her the rest of that evening. I got her cleaned up and comfortable. I called her primary care doctor and left a message about the missed medications. I watered the tomato plants. I fixed the porch light. I put the mail in a neat stack on the kitchen table and I straightened the welcome mat. Around 9 o'clock, she asked me to sit with her a little longer before she slept. So I pulled the chair close to her bed and we talked. Really talked. The way we used to before the army, before I grew up and got busy, before everything. She told me about the neighbor's dog who had learned to open the gate. She told me about a book she'd been trying to finish. She told me she'd been thinking a lot lately about my grandfather, who had died 8 years ago, and how she missed the sound of him moving around the house in the early morning. He was always up before the sun, she said. I used to pretend to be annoyed by it. She fell asleep, holding my hand. I sat there in the dark for a while after, listening to her breathe. The next morning I called my father. He picked up on the third ring. There was music in the background, something with a lot of bass, and I could hear water. A pool, probably, or a fountain. Marcus, he said. Hey, weren't you supposed to be back next month? I'm at Nan's house, I said. A pause. Oh, good. So you can keep an eye on things while we're gone. I kept my voice very level. I had learned how to do that. You learn a lot of things in the army, and one of them is how to keep your voice level when everything inside you is not level at all. When did you last talk to her? I asked. Your mother called her a few days ago. She missed 3 days of heart medication, I said. She was dehydrated. She thought it was Friday. She hasn't had a real meal in at least 2 days. Silence. The aide was supposed to come, he said, and his voice shifted a little. Not into guilt, exactly, but into the tone people use when they're already working on how to explain something. We had an aide set up. There was no aide, I said. There was no one. She was alone. Marcus, she is 81 years old, I said. She had a hip replacement 14 months ago. She is on 4 medications. She was alone for at least 4 days, and she didn't call anyone because she didn't want to make a fuss. My father said my name again in that particular way he had. Not apologetic, more like a warning. I'll figure it out when we get back, he said. When is that? Another pause. Longer this time. We have a few more days here. We already paid for the room. I said okay. I said I'd take care of things in the meantime. I hung up. Then I sat at the kitchen table, and I thought for a long time. I thought about the 11 months I had been gone. I thought about the letters I wrote that got passed along. I thought about how my nun had said your mother said she'd arrange something. The careful, quiet way she'd said it. The way someone says something when they've learned not to complain. I thought about the photo my mother had posted. I thought about 47 likes and 12 heart emojis, and sometimes you just have to recharge. I thought about a woman who had kept the same welcome mat for 41 years because she was loyal to things. My nan had been asking me, quietly, for about 2 years to help her get her affairs in order. Her words. She was a practical woman. Always had been. She'd watched her own mother leave this world with nothing settled, and she had vowed she would not do the same. She'd told me there was a document she wanted me to look over, a folder she kept in the lockbox in her closet that had all the important things inside. I had been meaning to ask her about it. I had always told myself I'd do it when I got home. That morning, I got home. I asked her about the folder. She told me to get the lockbox. She told me the combination, her wedding anniversary, the same number she'd used for everything as long as I could remember. I sat beside her on the bed, and we opened it together. There was a will. There was an advance directive. There was a healthcare proxy form with my name on it, signed and notarized, dated 14 months ago, right after the hip replacement, she told me, when she had started thinking clearly about these things. There was also a letter, handwritten, 3 pages, in her careful script. She told me I could read it later. She told me it would explain some decisions she had made and why. I read it that evening, after she went to sleep. I won't share everything in that letter. Some of it was private. Things between her and my grandfather. Things about her own life that she'd never told anyone. But the part that mattered for what came next was this. She had changed her will 2 years prior. She had done it quietly, with an attorney, after a particular Thanksgiving dinner that I had not been home for. A dinner she wrote where certain things were said about her memory, about whether it was time to start thinking about options, that had made something very clear to her. She had left the house to me. She had left the bulk of her estate, not enormous, but real, a life's worth of careful saving, to me, with a letter of instruction that I use a portion of it to establish something in my grandfather's name. He had been a Korean War veteran. She wanted something that helped veterans. She had written down the outline of what she imagined. The rest of her estate, a smaller portion, went to a local church she had attended for 30 years. My father was not in the will. I put the letter down and sat in the quiet kitchen for a very long time. My nan was not a cruel woman. She was not doing this out of spite. She had written that clearly and plainly. She said she had thought about it for a long time and that she had come to believe that a person's legacy should go where it would be tended carefully. She said she had seen enough to know who would tend it. 2 days later, my parents came home. My father walked in through the front door with his golf tin and his weekend bag, and he stopped when he saw me standing in the kitchen. "You're still here," he said. "I'm staying for a while," I said. My mother came in behind him. She looked at the kitchen. Tidy, dishes done, a pot of soup on the stove. And then she looked at me with an expression that was hard to read. "How is she?" my mother asked. "Better," I said. "Her doctor came by yesterday. He's adjusting one of her medications." "Good," my mother said. "Good." And then she started talking about the drive from the airport, about traffic, about how exhausted she was. I let her talk. I had learned how to do that too. The conversation I was not going to be able to avoid happened that evening, after my nan had gone to sleep. My father sat down across from me at the kitchen table and looked at me with an expression I recognized. The one he wore when he wanted to establish that he was in charge of something. "We need to talk about a more permanent solution," he said. "For your grandmother. A facility, maybe. Something with professional staff. She wants to stay in her home," I said. "She wants a lot of things," my father said, "but what she wants isn't always practical." "Her advance directive says home care," I said. "Her healthcare proxy names me." My father looked at me for a moment. "What are you talking about?" "She updated her documents 14 months ago," I said. "After her surgery. Her healthcare proxy is me. Her advance directive specifies home care with family support as the preferred option." He was quiet. "There's also a matter of the will," I said. "She asked me to connect with her attorney this week. There are things you should probably hear from him directly." I watched his face. I watched the golf tan and the confidence and the ease of a man who had just spent 5 days at a resort. And I watched those things shift into something else. "What did she do?" he said. "It wasn't really a question." "She did what she thought was right," I said. "And she did it 2 years ago when she was sharp and clear and had a very specific reason." He started to say something. I held up my hand. "I'm not going to fight with you," I said. "This is her house and her life and her decision. I'm here and I'm going to take care of her. That's all I'm doing." The next 48 hours were loud at times. My phone showed 31 missed calls from my father over 2 days. My mother sent 11 texts, most of them variations on the phrase, "This isn't what she would have wanted," about a document written in her own handwriting, witnessed by an attorney, and explained in 3 pages of her own careful script. There were conversations that got heated. There were accusations. There was a call from an attorney my father had apparently contacted, which went nowhere because the will was clean and properly executed and 2 years old. I stayed calm. I stayed in the house. I made soup and I fixed things, and I sat with my nan in the evenings and we watched the game shows she liked, and I let her win at cards even though she was sharper than me, and she knew I was letting her win. "You don't have to stay," she told me one evening. "I know," I said. "Your father is angry." "I know that too." She looked at her hands for a moment. "He was a good boy," she said. "When he was small, he was a very good boy." She said it the way people say things about someone they've had to slowly revise their understanding of, not with bitterness, but with a particular kind of sadness that comes from clear eyes. "I know," I said again. 8 months later, the Grayson Hallett Foundation held its first event, a resource fair for veterans and their families in the community center 3 miles from the house on Clover Ridge Road. My grandfather's name on the banner, my nan in the front row in her good blue coat, small and upright and sharper than anyone in the room. She had wanted something that helped veterans find their footing when they came home. She had seen, she told me once, how hard it was to come back, how the world didn't stop turning while you were gone, and sometimes coming home felt like arriving somewhere slightly foreign. She wasn't wrong about that. I stood at the back of the room and watched people come through. Young guys with the particular look I recognized. Families who didn't quite know how to talk to the person who had come back. A few older veterans who just wanted someone to acknowledge what they'd done. My nan shook every hand. She remembered every name. Afterward, walking to the car, she took my arm the way she did now when the ground was uneven, and she said, "Your grandfather would have liked this." "I think so too," I said. She stopped walking for a moment and looked up at me. This woman who had kept the same welcome mat for 41 years, who had grown tomatoes every summer and made gravy from scratch every Sunday, and who had, in her own quiet way, kept a very careful account of who showed up and who didn't. "You came home," she said. "Not a thank you, exactly. More like an acknowledgement. More like a record being set straight." "I came home," I said. She nodded once. Then she took my arm again and we walked to the car together. And the flag above the community center caught the September wind, and somewhere on the south side of the porch on Clover Ridge Road, the last of the summer tomatoes were finally coming in.